in Texas and Illinois public schools. Now a homeschooling mama, she spends days creating educational opportunities that meet her kids' unique needs while coaching others to be empowered, strong, and an informed voice for their children. Her family moved from Florida. Her family moved to Florida from Iowa in early 2020 to be closer to the medical care and services available at the Tourette Center of Excellence in Gainesville. Their journey with Tourette has been very challenging, but they stop at nothing to give their kids the support they need to live their best lives. Gina has chronicled this journey and will be releasing her first book, super exciting, Exceptionally Unordinary, this summer or early fall. She hopes it becomes a tool that sparks some much needed tough conversations and those in the special needs and parent with those in the special needs and parent community and in the education system. Thank you so much, Gina, and welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I know I can't hear back from everybody, so I'm used to like the back and forth, but thank you for the introduction, Wendy. And I am going to kind of just dive right in with a story that I wrote. I had chronicled life through a blog for a while, and some of that information has made its way into my book. And I thought I would start off with this post tonight because this is how our homeschooling journey started. So I'm going to read this to you quickly. If you are a parent or guardian of a child with special needs, the public school system can be a tough one to navigate. One minute you feel like you're finally on the right path, and the next you realize how far you have to go. Our family's ride has been a roller coaster, to say the least. This journey has revealed the cracks within the system, and I needed to expose them to create a more productive educational experience for children with special needs. It is common knowledge that no two children are alike. So why is our educational system bent on corralling children into the quintessential box? The desired outcome of this system appears to be one where children do what they are told, when they are told, how they are told, and in the end, demonstrate their knowledge on a standardized test. Let me be clear, I do not find the teachers at fault for this, but rather a broken educational system that appears to have been created by people with little knowledge or understanding of basic childhood development. So my children fall into the twice exceptional category. They are gifted, but have a disability. When it became apparent, the majority of the IEP team for my younger son was unwilling to acknowledge his very obvious hidden disabilities due to his performance on the evaluations they gave him for his IEP testing, and they instead wanted to attribute everything to behavioral challenges, we knew it was time for a new plan. A crucial component of his education was being overlooked: the struggle to perform in the classroom. The emotional toll it was taking on him and us was too much to bear anymore, and we finally made the decision to withdraw him in, that was November of 2017. Since then, we withdrew our other 3 children in 2018. And that is where our homeschool journey began. I have to hit my, there we go. So who am I? Wendy gave a great intro. I am a licensed special ed teacher, and I have 4 kiddos. My 2 boys have Tourette. And like she said, I'm a homeschooling mom, and that's why I am here tonight. So let's dive in here. These are my kids. We are big advocates for the Tourette community, and homeschooling has given us the opportunity to really allow our kids, especially my oldest son, Noah, to be a vocal voice for kids who have Tourette syndrome. So this is what homeschooling might look like. We have my son here who is working in a workbook. And then on the right, we are out at a state park here in Florida at a springs looking at manatees. We might be baking, or we might be at a science museum. We might be working on kiwi crates or doing some work on the computer. This is not what homeschool looks like. My kids are not sitting all day long and listening to me talk. And that is the biggest difference between a traditional school, obviously, and homeschool, but it is the hardest to accept as a parent that what you believe like school is, in what, if you've gone through the public school system, even the private school system, you have this vision of what school is, and it takes a lot of effort to retrain your brain and realize that if you're going to, if you are going to homeschool, this is not what your day is going to look like. So why homeschool? There are several reasons people choose, and I'm just going to go through a few of them. School is not a good fit. That sounds pretty simple, but why might school not be a good fit? For some, the pace is too fast, and for others, the pace is too slow. I happen to have kids who are on both sides of that spectrum. My daughter, who does not have Tourette syndrome, but she does have a lot of the co-occurring conditions that go along with Tourette. She has some learning disabilities. The pace was too fast. She became very frustrated because she couldn't keep up with work, particularly in math. And then for our younger son, Will, he's the one in the soccer shirt there. He's 10. School was way too slow. And the worst feeling in the world for him was boredom. And because the pace of school was so slow, it often led to him being very restless and he wanted things to move on. Another reason school might not be a good fit is that the stress and anxiety that they experience just has a very negative effect on their mental health. And that was certainly the case for my oldest son, Noah. And I will get into some more of that later. Some people choose to homeschool because of recurring instances of bullying. I have met several families who have had that problem. A child may be repeatedly picked on, and there's no resolution. The child feels unsafe going to school and their mental health declines, and they may go through bouts of anxiety and depression. And sadly, for particularly my younger son, the peers were not the only bullies in the school. His greatest problem that he had was a school administrator. Another reason why people may choose to homeschool is because they have unique needs that are not met. This is where I'm talking about more of the hidden disabilities, particularly the specific learning disabilities. And I can only speak to our experience, but one of the greatest needs that our kids had that went unrecognized and not accommodated was with writing, which is very, very common in children with Tourette syndrome. Both of my boys have dysgraphia. Both of them are very intelligent and have a lot of ideas, and they could not get them down on paper. And as time went on, my younger son was repeatedly punished for that. And my older son's grades declined because he wasn't able to keep up with the work. Another reason might just simply be their TIC support. They might need breaks, and they might need a safe space, and they might need the peer education, and perhaps your school is not willing to accommodate those needs. Another reason is a misunderstood child. Oftentimes, our kiddos with Tourette might exhibit some behaviors, which, as most of us know, we kind of refer to those more as symptoms than behaviors. And what happened with our son was that no one would look at those unique needs we just talked about, and they just continually labeled him a behavior problem and wanted to put him in a behavior disorder program and not provide the proper support he needed. The inability for our kiddos often to filter their words, that lack of mental breaks can get them into some challenging situations, and sometimes those behaviors may be viewed as purposeful, and that can lead to punishment and public displays of discipline and even suspension. Seclusion and restraint may be utilized when control is lost, and that is what happened with our younger son, and that is ultimately why we removed him from school, because he had endured trauma unbeknownst to us, and we needed to get him out of the school. So our reasons why we homeschool weren't exactly like this great feeling of, oh, this would be great for our family. Let's do this. It was more out of necessity, and we knew something needed to change. Obviously, homeschooling is I feel like it's gaining steam even without this graph. You can see the late 90s to now, the numbers have increased. And I think during the pandemic, those numbers might even go higher now that, you know, our schools are opening. But I think a lot of people saw the benefits of keeping their kids home. And so I expect those numbers to rise as the years go on. So what are some benefits of homeschooling? The biggest benefit is flexibility. So learning can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be at home, at a table, in front of a computer. It can be anywhere. I have taken our kids' work with us. We've done it the year we went to the Tourette, the conference in Washington, DC. You know, we went and toured DC, but we also had our work with us, and we did it in the hotel room. There's different modes of learning. Not all kids are paper pencil kids. A lot of our kids aren't paper pencil kids. You can utilize the computer, you can utilize hands-on building, you can utilize workbooks, you can buy a big fancy curriculum if you so choose, you can create your own. There's just a wide variety of opportunities, and the flexibility, particularly for my kids, has been a huge blessing. Once again, you don't have to just sit and do your work. We have lots of flexible seating, and we call them bungee blankets, but they're those stretchy blankets they can get in. So, you know, sometimes if we're reading, we're in a blanket and using that resistance to help us. If we need a break, we are running outside or on the trampoline or on the swings. There is less time, like it takes less time because you're not waiting for the class to catch up. There's not transitions. The school day itself is less time. And then one of the great benefits that we have found is that we can schedule therapy appointments while other kids are at school. This has been particularly helpful for mental health therapists because they're hard to come by, and they're often full after school. So we go at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it has worked out really wonderfully. It also gives your kids the opportunity to pursue their interests. If you could look at the top left, that's my son, Noah. He is a 14-year-old sports broadcaster. And this is a venture he has completely done on his own. In this picture, he's interviewing Mac Jones, who was a Heisman Trophy candidate, and he ended up being drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Noah set all of this up himself. He contacted the Alabama football office. He interviewed Mac. He has since interviewed him again, and it has allowed Noah to pursue his interest in sports, and his budding, we call it his amateur career, has really taken off. You can see my daughter on the top right. She is an artist. She just lives in her head. She is the most creative person. I don't know where that came from because it certainly wasn't from her dad or me, but she is into making furry costumes. And so here is one that she's made herself. She is currently writing a graphic novel that she's writing and drawing. And once again, it's completely self-initiated. I didn't tell her to do it. It's by her choice because that's her interest. It provides less stress and anxiety. My kids had a really hard time going to school. I had gotten to the point with my younger son where he would refuse to put his shoes on because he was so anxious to go to school. And I should have listened to those red flags, and I should have paid more attention. And I knew, but I tried to make it work. I thought we could educate the school enough. But once we removed him to homeschool, that anxiety and the stress started to decline. And for my other three, it definitely, they don't have the trauma that my younger son has, and they became much more relaxed and had many fewer outbursts because they didn't have the stress of school anymore. It's nice for the boys because they can freely ticket home. They're not worried about anyone looking at them or making fun of them. And instead of suppressing all day and coming home and having explosions, they tick freely. And honestly, their ticks are significantly less than when they were in school. We can take breaks when the kids are overwhelmed or tired or frustrated. They are kind of self-advocates, and they'll say, hey, I need a break. Is that okay? And I, more times than not, say, yes, it's okay. Not all the time, because sometimes they just don't want to do their work. But most times, if they need a little break, they take a break. We get real life experience. Once again, Noah has had the opportunity to go to a PGA golf tournament and shadow one of the newscasters here, and he got to be on his ESPN radio show. It's just a different experience for everybody. We travel a lot. My husband travels for work, so we try to go along with him when we can. And then we also have the ability to modify our day. If you look at the picture on the bottom left, that's my younger son. He happens to be on quite a bit of medication for managing all of the comorbids and his tics, and it can make him tired. Sometimes he doesn't sleep well at night. And so he has the opportunity to curl up and rest and then get back up and work. And he's better off. He's rested, he's willing to work, and he's recognizing in himself when he needs that break and that rest, which helps tremendously instead of fighting through that all the time and then the day declining from there. And then that picture on the right there, we use a lot of manipulatives. And so we have all of those tools available to the kids, so we can make those accommodations and we can help them with their work if they need to have a tool. Homeschooling Mythbusters. One of the biggest questions people have about homeschooling is, well, what do you do about socialization? Aren't they missing out because they're at home with you all day? No, and you'll see why in just a little bit. A child will be behind or missing out. Higher education is not possible. It's costly. And I'm not a teacher. These are all myths, and I'm going to bust them right now. So socialization. If you look at these pictures, does it look like my kiddos are like isolated and have no one to hang out with? Absolutely not. So this picture on the left is Noah. He has joined a teen homeschooling group, and there are co-ops and homeschooling groups, and some are, meet weekly, some meet daily, some meet a few times a week. You can hop on social media in your area, and I can guarantee you will find opportunities for your kids to socialize. Some are faith-based, some are not. There are so many different options that you can find one that fits your family. I am absolutely sure of it. And then you can see this is my son over here. He's in the middle of all those kids. This is Will. And prior to us moving to Florida, he really didn't have any friends. He hung out with a few neighborhood kids here and there, but this was his birthday party. And these are his built-in neighborhood friends. Some of them go to school, some of them are homeschooled, but when they come home from school, he is outside for 3 or 4 hours running around with kids. He is definitely not lacking in socialization opportunities, but instead his opportunities are now positive instead of the negative ones he was experiencing at school. He was the kid that had the target on his back because he got in trouble a lot. And so kids started to pick on him, or they would themselves would get in trouble and they would get into some mischief and blame it on him. And so his interactions became very negative. And now he is happy as a clam and he has many, many friends to hang out with. And then this is my daughters on the bottom. And they also have a very large neighborhood social circle that they hang around with. And they are certainly not lacking, not lacking in the socialization department, as you can see by that picture. You can find a lot of socialization opportunities just in a natural environment. There's extracurriculars, your neighborhood. There are a lot of businesses offer homeschool classes. We have an art class. I know there's yoga, dance, like there's many, many opportunities for you to find for your kids to be around other kids. So the second myth was the child will be behind or missing out. And I'm not going to read through all of this. You can kind of check it out yourself. And I know this will be available later, but if you can see that typically home educated kids score higher on the test than public school kids. I am part of a lot of social media boards in Florida, and I have seen, it's interesting for me to see the people who are older than my kids, and their kids are doing well, and they're getting into college, and they're getting scholarships, and they are years above where their peers may be if they have a particular interest, because they've had time to foster that interest. You might have your artists. I know there's kids who are gamers, and they've gone on and they've learned all the coding at home, and they've gone on to get degrees, and they've graduated from college really young. So this is just a slide for your information. It's to kind of show you that yes, kids can be successful if they're homeschooled. It provides a lot of real life experiences. This is the left is Noah on the radio show. We have our kids out on a boat looking at wildlife. This is over here at the beach with a turtle that happened to be walking by. And then we've gone to the Space Center so we can learn about things, but then we can actually go and see them, which makes that learning so much more concrete than just reading about it in a textbook. I had a couple other ones on here. The higher education is not possible. That's absolutely not true. A lot of homeschooled kids do what's called dual enrollment. You would have to check with your state and your district how that works, but they take high school classes for college credit, and many kids will graduate high school, or they will graduate high school with like an associate's degree already. So there are plenty of opportunities. As a homeschooling mom, I just am now having my first kid going into high school, and I know I have to make transcripts, and I've had to keep track of what they've done in a portfolio anyways, but now I'll need to keep more detailed records. But he's going to take classes, and he's going to take some online, and we'll do our own curriculum, and I will just make my own transcript that will follow him. There's extracurricular activities that they can get involved in, and volunteer opportunities that look great on your college application forms. So you can find those community service opportunities that interest you, and you have that flexibility to do it during the day when other kids are at school, if that is what works for you. And it's also found that many homeschool kids score better on the ACT and the SAT than kids who go to school. And then lastly, the costly, it's really not, it doesn't have to be costly. You can utilize free opportunities online. We use Khan Academy, for example, for math that costs us no money whatsoever. There are also other opportunities that you can utilize through your state. Maybe Florida, for example, has Florida Virtual, and that is free to us. But it definitely varies by person. It depends on what route you want to take. There are all sorts of online curriculums. You can design your own curriculum and pick and choose what you're going to do, which is what I've done during my time. But there are a lot of free resources online. Like we have done like K-5 learning and Starfall, Recess Room, Prodigy, ABC. They all have great educational games. You can also find like worksheets on there if that's what you want to do. I guess I should just go back to this other slide because I'm cruised way ahead here. I'm not a teacher. I am a teacher. I will say that, but it does not matter. I don't teach my kids how I was taught to teach. And quite frankly, I taught early childhood special education. So I'm well beyond where I was. I have to relearn some things with my oldest, but you can do this if you're not a teacher. I can assure you there are great groups all around you who would help support you and people with better experience or more experience that would be happy to guide you through it. All right, now I'm going to move on to the next ones here. So a parent's perspective. Trial and error to find what works. We have tried multiple modes of learning in this house. I would get recommendations for online curriculums, and some people were like, my kids love it. I love it. And we tried it, and I tried to stick with it for a while, and the kids didn't like it and they weren't successful. And after a while, I'm like, why am I fighting them? So you as the parent have to take a step back, and you have to realize that you have your kids home for a reason, and trial and error is the name of the game. Like, it's going to take you a while to figure out what works, and that's okay. I can assure you your kids learn all day long, even with the things like you're not putting in front of them. They have a lot of self-directed learning. If something doesn't work, move on. That's absolutely what needs to be done. Give it a fair shot. And if you figure out it doesn't work, just let it go. It's okay. You have to reframe what school looks like. If you remember, I put that picture on the front of the kids sitting at the desk, looking at the teacher. And for me, being a former teacher, like, I just have that ingrained in me. Like, we should sit down for 3 hours a day and work on school. And this is just how it should be. But that's not how it should be. If that was a successful model for your child, they'd be at school, they'd be happy, you'd be happy, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So you have to reframe what school looks like. One term I will give you that I feel like you should look into, it's called deschooling. So deschooling is basically taking all that you've learned about traditional school and throwing it out the window. And it takes a lot of time to do it. And I feel like I have been homeschooling my younger sons for almost 4 years. And this is probably the first year where I'm like, okay, like, we're good. I don't have to do X, Y, Z and fit it in the box because that's what school looks like. And I have a hard time sometimes with that with my husband, because he still, feels like school looks a certain way. But that's not what homeschooling is. School doesn't look a certain way. It's different for everybody. You need to familiarize yourself with disabilities and how to accommodate them. You absolutely don't need to be an expert on it, but you need to be familiar with that. And there are a lot of really wonderful online resources for that. And I think I listed them. So just be patient and I'll give you some of them. You can seek out professionals to help you. Maybe, for example, my neighbor down the street, her son has dyslexia, and they have found people to help support him, a tutor, a specific way, a curriculum for reading. Seek out those professionals. You can utilize those people, and it will make your child's experience much, much better. You can use the tutors. You can utilize your mental health professionals. Let them help you. They have many great ideas. An occupational therapist might be of benefit to your child if they qualify for that, speech pathologist, etc. And then lastly, you have to offer yourself grace, because some days will be hard and that's okay. Some days, many days, you will say, why am I doing this? I can't do this anymore, whatever. And you might get really frustrated and down in the dumps, but you just have to offer yourself grace. You don't have all the answers. You're never going to have all the answers, but you know your child better than anybody else on this planet, and you can make this work. You just have to be patient. You have to be patient with yourself. You have to be patient with your kiddo, and you just have to let it kind of evolve as it may. So here's some examples of my kids. This is not what a traditional classroom looks like, right? Like, we have a magazine that's science today. We're reading the magazine on the couch. I did not have to fight him to do that. It was like, hey, we've got some new magazines. Why don't you look through it, find something that interests you? And 3 years ago, that would have been a huge battle. It would have been just one long fight. And we are well past that now. And then you can see on the right over here, he is playing, my boys are playing chess, and they have the starting chess. They wanted to learn how to play. So we can be flexible and expand on those interests. And that's a high level thinking skill there. So here are some resources for you. If you recall, I said with the seek out the online resources, I have found these to be very helpful. The attitudemag.com, LD online. So that's all learning disabilities, which many of our kids have those. This is the top one, has to do with ADD, ADHD, but it also includes the learning disabilities. It includes the executive function deficits. It includes the things you'll want to familiarize yourself with so you can know how to help your kiddo. Understood.org, if your child has a diagnosed learning disability and some others, they have what's called through the eyes of your child simulators. And if you have time, Google that and look through those. Particularly, I did the one for dysgraphia, and I know it's frustrating for my kids, but doing that exercise really sent it home how frustrating it is for them. And then obviously I have found wonderful resources through the TRET Association. The TRET Association was literally, I will say, they saved our lives when we started this journey, because we had no idea what we were dealing with. Like many of you, we thought, oh, Tourette is tics. And then we saw the iceberg visual and we realized it was a lot more than tics. And there's a lot of great resources on there, and they can connect you with a lot of great resources for you locally. And I would recommend that you utilize that. So my advice to you is let go of what you thought life would be and embrace what it is. You have the ability to create an educational environment that is experiential in nature and expands on your child's natural curiosity. You don't have to fight to fit a square peg in a round hole anymore. The world is their classroom and you are their guide. And that is something that with our younger son, we tried really hard to educate the school, and it wasn't well received. We didn't make a lot of progress, and we fought all through kindergarten in 3 months of first grade, and it just didn't work. And unfortunately, in his case, it led to a lot of trauma. He has post-traumatic stress disorder. He spent a lot of time in seclusion and restraint, and we fought the wrong fight at that time. I needed to pull him out a long time before I needed to pull him out much sooner than we did. But here we are, and he left in first grade, and now he's going into fifth grade, and I have all 4 of my kids home. I've had him home for a while. And you can do it. Like, we can do it. You can do it. We can do this. So this is a picture of the kids at the Civil Rights Museum in Atlanta. It was a great trip and very educational for them. If a child can't teach or learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. I've had this quote for a really long time, and education doesn't have to look the same for everybody. Some of our kids are super hands-on. Some of our kids love to read. Some of our kids hate to read. Some of our kids love the computer work. Some of our kids will love to write stories. Like, we just need to find what is our child's niche, what's their preferred way of learning, and expand upon that. Here is some recommended reading. There's some books there on the left. I put this blog on there. I follow this guy, this stark raving dad. They don't live in the United States. I think they're in like Australia, but they are unschoolers. So unschooling is very self-directed child learning, but I always find a lot of value in his perspective. And I wanted to share that with you. And then the books, like I said on the left, are kind of eye-opening. If your kid is still in school and you're on the fence, I like this, What School Could Be. It shows if we could be a little bit more flexible in our schools, how it would benefit our kids, and that might help you in your decision. The Self-Driven Child is a great book, and The Strength Switch. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Empowerment Groups. I have a website. I have email. I am typically a very open book, as you'll probably figure out. Our book is coming out soon, and it's very open book as well. And I feel like my personal philosophy is we are here to share our story, because I found it to be very isolating and lonely. And I never thought that there would be as many people experiencing the same thing that we were. And I found those people through sharing our story and seeking out others in support groups. And once we get talking, we realize how many of us share this kind of common experience, and we can kind of all put our heads together and we can make this work, and our kiddos can be successful despite all of their exceptionally unordinary lives that they lead. So I think that is all. It is. That's the last slide.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was fantastic presentation. I just want to remind everybody to submit questions in the chat, or if you're on Facebook Live, you can submit them right there. Also, I'd like to ask everybody who participated to use the link in the chat to fill out a survey for us. We are funded by the CDC to bring this programming to you, and our surveys are really important for us to continue to get that funding. So please use the link to fill out the survey as well. If there aren't any questions from the audience, I do have a few here, Gina.
Okay.
I have one that I was thinking that might be really helpful to the attendees. I was thinking about what you said. I wrote down when you said once we got past the fight, that your son would just, you saw him with his magazines that he was just starting to read. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about how you got past that fight, and I know exactly what you mean, that fight of, I don't want to do it, I can't do it. I want to do what I want to do today, whatever it is, whatever it's related to. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the situation with our younger son was, he's the one who has the trauma from school. And we saw a neuropsychiatrist out at the Tourette Center of Excellence in Kansas City before we moved down here. And he told us that because of the negative experiences at school, we would have to basically de-school him. And he thought it would probably take a couple of years. And de-schooling kind of entailed not pushing the buck, like not forcing him into the corner and punishing him if he didn't do things. We needed to take the negative experiences that he had and that negative mentality he had of school and try as we may to decrease that and make that go away, so that when we even brought up school, he wouldn't fight us immediately, because that's where we were at. So I learned over time that I would give suggestions, and he please don't believe that he's been like allowed to walk around the house and do whatever he wants every single day. He has done a lot of work. But it's been in a way where I refuse at this point. I refuse to enter into a power struggle. We have expectations of, hey, these are the things that we need to accomplish. And then once we accomplish these things, you're free to go. But the biggest challenge with him was his resistance to doing things he didn't want to do. But we started by trial and error, figuring out what was interesting to him and letting him take a little bit of a self-directed role in that. So with the magazine, for example, they're short articles. He doesn't like to read long articles. I think it's hard for him to track that long. It's hard for him to focus on a certain thing that long. But in this particular magazine, there was an article about sharks. So it was probably about a page and a half. But we had a wide variety of magazines. They're all National Geographic for Kids magazines for science. And it was, hey, look through these and find something, that you'd like to learn about today. And for him, giving him that sense of control, right? He's still doing what I wanted him to do, but he has control over what he's doing. And I didn't have to sit there and be like, if you don't do this, then you can't, go play Xbox or whatever. Over time, with a lot of consistency, it has just been, hey, here's our expectations. Here's some things you can choose from, or do you have an idea? And I've put some of that into his hands to make that choice. Because I think a lot of our kids have this need to feel like they're in control because so much of their body they can't control. And so we've worked really hard on, I know you might not like this, I know there might be other things you'd like to do, but this is what we have to do, and you can choose how you're going to do it. And it's one of those things where the more you fight them, the more they're going to fight back. And if you can relinquish a little bit of that control and set them up for success and still finish what you want or need them to do with them feeling like they're in control, then that tide starts to change. So that's kind of where we are in our house now.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was a great explanation. We do have several questions that came in. Here's one. We have always homeschooled our 3 boys. How do you deal with outright school refusal? And I think you kind of answered some of this with what you've been talking about. She said our 10-year-old son often has meltdowns or rage outbursts and refuses to do schoolwork often. And we tried changing curricula, encouraging breaks, and offering as much flexibility as possible.
Yeah, I think that one's hard, right? Because every kid is different. And so of my 4 kids, Will, my younger son, is by far most challenging. And we've had a lot of struggles, but I would say I have been consistent. And it's part of what we worked through, even with his therapist, is, we give the expectation. We give that expectation, and once that expectation is met, you can do the fun, whatever you want to do. But with Will, he wasn't real fond of Khan Academy, but that was what we were doing. And we would get through that, but he had to do it in a different way than the other kids. And some of it could be as simple as he would say, I hate this guy's voice. Like, it took him forever to tell me that he did not want to watch the videos to learn because he could not stand the guy's voice. So often with our kids, there's like something we're not even thinking of. And we, like, it would be great if they could just verbalize that all the time. But once I stopped forcing the issue with the video, teaching that skill, and either I would teach it or I could find someone else who, like, there's YouTube videos all over the place, someone who had a pleasant voice for him to listen to that he wouldn't fight, we could make progress with that. But if your kid is like just refusing, and it is that power struggle, you might have to do that deschooling. And there is a lot of information out on there and out on deschooling. and I think some people might look at it as like a negative and like, oh, the kid's getting their way and look, they're just escaping and not doing what they need to do. But if their brain is so wired to resist school so much, there's obviously trigger points that have to be reversed, and that fight or flight has to be lessened. So I would recommend kind of looking into that and encouraging that self-directed learning. Learning looks different for everybody. And you just have to keep at it. I have fought my fair share of battles, and I don't really fight them anymore. I quit.
Great, thank you, Gina. A couple people wanted to know about homeschooling and college. So somebody said that they are interested in potentially homeschooling a rising high school senior and the college application process. How do you explain on the application the decision to withdraw from public school as a senior? I don't know if you have any advice on that.
I was actually looking into a little bit of high school stuff the other day because I was looking at when I was researching a little bit, because mine is just a rising freshman. So we're not that far yet, but there are a lot of online support groups that you can look a lot in your area. If you look at like dual enrollment is a very popular one for the high school crowd. And a lot of those people have great explanations on that stuff, probably much better than I do. But from what I read about college application stuff is I don't think you have to give any reason why you withdrew them whatsoever. Just as long as they have a transcript, both, because they've already been in school for 3 years, and then whatever they're going to do this year and their test scores. From what I read from numerous colleges, the homeschool kids had no disadvantage when applying. But like I said, I would recommend, if you're on social media, looking at some of that homeschool teen groups in your area, because there are people on there that know a lot. They've clearly been through it, and they have great advice on there.
Great, thanks, Gina. Here's one that some people might wonder about, like, how do you deal with when you have 4 kids and they're home together all day and, they're arguing with each other or, fighting over something, just maybe talk about that a little bit.
I've been doing this for 14 years. I feel like I've homeschooled. I haven't really had a break from them. I will say, for what's kind of nice about my kids is my kids are pretty smushed together. Like there's 6 years between oldest and youngest, and they do get at each other's throats sometimes, but I am pretty free with, once their work is done, we try to get our work done in the morning. Everybody seems to get up fairly early. I make my oldest, he would sleep till noon if I let him. And I know that's a benefit of homeschooling, but it doesn't work for our family at this time to just let him do school in the afternoon. Like we all get up and we do our thing. But once we're done, and even when they're working, they are given the opportunity to have their own space. I don't make everybody gather around the table and stay together and work side by side. My older daughter has extreme sensory issues. Like she cannot do anything if people are making noise. And so they have the opportunity to go off in their spaces and do their work. And when they're done with their work, some, like my older ones especially, retire to their room. They go up to their room, they close their door, and they do what they want. And that works for me. Like if you've done your work and you want to go up to your room and draw or whatever, play on a computer or phone, like great, we all need our space. I am not perfect at this by any means. And some days my husband comes home and I'm like, wow, what are we doing? But I think it's important to get out of the house. I think it's really hard to be stuck in the same house day in and day out and never leave it. So if you can change up your environment, great. If you can find like an outdoor co-op, like my son is part of a teen group. Well, he's the only one in my family that can go to the teen group. So that gives him an opportunity to break off from everybody for 3 hours a day. They have groups for all sorts of ages and interests. And so if you can take advantage of those, because your schedule is flexible, find those opportunities where they can go and be around same age peers and have some interactions with other people so that they're not all constantly at each other's throats, and you get a break too. You can find opportunities where you can get a break.
Thanks, Gina. And I'll take, we'll do one more question and then we will wrap up this great live webinar. So somebody asked at what grade is it best to start homeschooling?
I would say whenever you look at your kid and you think this is not working. So I don't think there's any and like a specific answer for that. Some kids, like some of my kids would do okay in school. My youngest daughter would do just fine in school, but it doesn't make sense to me to send her to school and then keep the other ones home or vice versa. But I think that you have to just look at your family and your person, like, do you feel that school is working? Are you happy with school? Are you happy with, the way school is run, right? Like, are you happy with that? Are you not happy with that? And you just have to make that decision. My youngest daughter went to school she's gone to school for first grade, not even all of first grade, because we moved. So she's been in school and she's going into third grade. And then my oldest son was in school from kindergarten through fifth grade. And then we pulled him out. So my kids never they never went to public school. They've all been in public school. And I think it's honestly, it's what works for your kid and your family. There is no answer to that question. I don't think. Any time is a good time.
Thanks, Gina. Also, how can I overcome fears of homeschooling? I feel like I don't have the patience and I don't want to ruin my relationship with my daughter by bringing stress.
Yeah, I get that. I get that one a lot. So I think that it's a conversation that I don't know, it's a conversation for us. We had some conversations with our kids about school. They had come to us. They were struggling at school. They were frustrated. And honestly, that was changing the dynamic in our house, because they were very anxious and they were very stressed and they were very frustrated, and they didn't come home from school in great moods most of the time. And then you have the homework you have to force the issue with, and we would fight. And I felt like, having them at school wasn't making our relationship better. And I don't particularly think that I am a person. Most people would probably say I'm like super patient, but I don't feel like I'm very patient. But I feel like it's natural to be afraid of the unknown. And you might feel that your relationship might be negatively impacted, but you might be pleasantly surprised that it's positively impacted, because life just looks different now. We have different opportunities, and my kids are happier. They sometimes will say, oh, maybe I'd like to go back to school. And then when they really think about it, they're like, no, I don't really want to go back to school. I feel like I know my kids pretty well, and outside influences haven't changed. I feel like they know who they are pretty well, and that helps a lot. And I think it's natural to be afraid of it, but nothing is permanent. And if you tried it and you were like, this just isn't really working for me, you can always go back.
Great. Gina, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your stories and all of your advice. I think this has been fantastic. And I want people to know there's a few questions that we still haven't gotten to, but Gina has agreed to answer them, after the webinar. We will send a follow-up email and we'll make sure we answer the rest of these questions. But I want to thank you again so much and just remind everybody to please fill out the survey that's in the chat as well. And on that note, I hope everybody has a wonderful night. I hope you had as much great information to take away as I did. And actually, Gina, such great inspiration as well. So thank you so much. And visit Gina at Power Parent Empowerment Groups. The link is in the chat and on her slides, which I've attached. And also Tourette.org for more resources on Tourette syndrome and co-occurring conditions.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Bye-bye now.
Bye.